right. So Nate, I'll have you start by introducing yourself. Tell us a little about yourself.
My name's Nate. I'm a CIS major. I'm technically classified as a junior, but I'm on track to graduate next semester. And I'm kind of just coming here to see what graduate school might be like, costs, benefits, stuff like that. So.
I'm Ashley. My major is history with a minor in Japanese.
Okay. Now, how far along are you in the program?
I'm a senior. I graduate next semester.
Okay, so you'll be graduating soon. So, good, Nate. All right. So we'll start with Becca. I know that you're obviously financial aid the most important when it comes to money wise. So.
I'm Becca Diskin, the Director of Financial Aid here at Southern. I guess from a really broad perspective, I feel like I can talk about both sides of it, being an MBA recipient myself, going through grad school at some point earlier in my life, and then as well as a financial aid recipient for that program as well as what I do for a living, help students get other types of aid to help them go to school. So be happy to answer any questions and talk about it from that perspective.
Yeah, my name is Dave Smith. I'm the coordinator for the Masters of Accounting program. I just got a meeting at 1 o'clock where it was recent graduates talking, and the current students were saying, is this Masters worth it? Because it just seems like it's a lot of work, and they were very, yes, it's worth it, do it. So we'll talk about some of that as we go through what they mentioned. So.
Hi guys, I'm Mike Holderman. I'm the graduate coordinator for the Criminal Justice Master's degree. It's a cooperative program with Southeast Missouri State and our institution. It's completely online, so if that interests you, computer information. I don't know so much about history going into criminal justice, but I'll give you a little bit more information on that if you want. Some of the general things you might want to consider, other than it's completely online. It's a fixed rotating schedule, so you should be able to complete taking at least 6 hours a semester, including summer, in 2 years. So.
I'm Carissa Gober, and a professor in teacher education and the coordinator for the Masters, they're up there, but the Masters of Science in English Language Learners. So teachers who want to teach either internationally or teach students in our country English as a second language. We also have a master's in administration, and we have a master's in curriculum and instruction. So all three of those are completely online, and so we keep growing. Our numbers keep growing in those programs.
Now, I have a question specifically about, of course, the criminal justice. We have quite a few of my students that I advise in Project Stay are criminal justice majors. So, I mean, what would be, some of the benefits of going, into that program and getting the master's there? I mean, how would that most likely help them in their career field?
A master's degree, typically, and there's two routes you go with our particular one. One is to move up in the organization, or whatever that organization may be, in the criminal justice system. I mean, it's not just for criminal justice major. It can be any major that wants to get an advanced education that deals with organizations, administration, management, supervision type stuff, and research. So it's not just for criminal justice majors. However, we do get a lot of criminal justice majors coming into the program, but you can be a history major, and as long as you take certain prereq courses at the undergraduate level, you can apply and get into that program. But then we have the ones that want to go on and continue their education to get a doctorate, maybe, or something like that.
Because I know when I was applying to a master's program for history, since my degree was in political science, but I already had a master's in public administration, I think it required like 24 hours of history classes undergrad. And so would you say that there's, a certain amount of hours you probably
Yes.
have to take in criminal justice, kind of
The requirements, if you don't have a degree or you haven't taken that specific course in criminal justice, the 4 requirements are actually 3. No, there's 4. Introduction to criminal justice, which is an intro type class for our program. Criminal law, another sociological type class, such as something in a history program. You might have even taken some of those courses in your program, and an undergraduate statistics class. So those are our 4 12 hours basically if you don't already have something like that, that you have to get into the program. It's kind of the fundamentals to make sure you understand the process.
So I think, like in some ways, if let's say a student decides the minor in criminal justice,
Mhm.
there's probably a good chance they're going to hit
Yes,
most of those classes.
Because if their minor is criminal justice or any other minors, it's required. The requirements are introduction to criminal justice in all four. I believe criminal law is in all four, and then statistics is one that I know. History, does that require a statistics course? How about CIS? I believe it does.
We just have to take Math 130, at least for my degree. Some of the higher level require up to calculus. So it just kind of depends on which route you take.
But the actual course has to be completely in statistics, and then sociological type course, which you probably have, most of us do at some point. So really, any undergraduate, other than the introduction and the criminal law, probably have the other two courses. So they really ought to take two.
Now I know that for my program where I applied, they didn't require the GRE. Now the majority of colleges tend to require that in programs. Does your program require to take the GRE?
It's not required. However, if you don't have a 3.0 or above, you're required, and you have a 2.75 to 2.99, that little gap right there. Anything lower than 2.75, no. But anything in that gap, 2.75 to 2.99, they require a certain score of 300. So
I know that's same with the program. If I had a 3.0 or higher, you
Right.
wouldn't have to take that.
if that's the case, then you have other criteria, a letter of intent, stuff like that. That's
Okay.
pretty straightforward.
I know a lot of students worry about taking that GRE. We have a lot of students asking questions about
Yes.
it, how to register, all this stuff, and so they're generally pretty freaked out about that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of good in a way if they have a good GPA.
Yes, 3.0 and above.
Yeah.
So.
And then of course the accounting program. I mean, I also have several students that are maybe either in business or accounting, probably a combination or stuff.
Sure, I'll speak actually to two. There's the accounting program, they have Masters of Science and Management, or MSSU. The accounting is really geared towards someone sitting for a certification exam, so there's a fair amount of prereqs, and so you'd want to look for that, like in any program, if I was going to do it, are the prereqs. We have a lot, so it's almost, if you're not an accounting major, it's going to take a while to get up there, but I've had English lit majors, music majors, who've come in and taken the broad background. The other degree, Masters of Science and Management, has no prereqs. So you can have that English lit degree or history or CIS and walk right in. There are no leveling classes whatsoever to walk in. And so if you want to get it done a little faster, a lot faster, I'd go the MSSs compared to that. So. But I think a lot of it depends, what do you want to do with the degree? I'm not a big fan of all this kind of wander through my education, and I kind of want to have a goal. I'm doing this degree because I have a passion about the subject, or I really want to, use my degree in some way. And so, depending on what you're doing or what you want to do, that's really one of those degrees to see what's out there and what you can do. So.
One thing I'm curious about is the students that are applying to your program. I mean, what type of students are those? Are they like working adults who maybe have kind of been out in the field who want to go back and get that advanced degree, or are they basically coming straight out, getting their bachelor's and they just want to continue to finish it up?
We've got both. The Masters of Accounting has two options. The traditional, you graduated, you have your undergrad, and then either right away after some time period you come and apply. We also have an accelerated where they actually apply their junior year and senior year, and Becca loves this in financial aid. Senior year, they'll actually start taking a blend of graduate and undergrad classes. So of course the accelerated, they're traditional age students basically. But what we're seeing is a lot of the traditional age or older are using it somewhat as a career reset, like maybe I got a degree, maybe even in accounting, but I haven't necessarily practiced or done it for a while, and so I kind of want to reinvent myself. It's kind of tough to go get a job if they say, well, what have you done the last 10 years? "That's why I've been a stay-at-home mom." You know, well, that's understandable, but if you go and say, "I just picked up this graduate degree and I'm getting into the workforce," it's kind of like reset, boom, you're ready to go. So a lot of folks are using it kind of bad.
So I can do this, Dave?
You can do
Okay.
that. We can have
Reset.
No, no, please. But I would say, you know, it's definitely making people stand out if they have the graduate degree. Because, you know, undergrad's kind of expected now, a graduate degree really makes you stand out.
Yeah, it does seem like in the probably past 10, 15 years, I mean, that more and more people are starting to get that master's degree, so it's becoming a lot more common.
Right.
You know, there, you know, it's kind of like before, high school was all you needed, but now you pretty much have to have, you know, a college degree nowadays, and even now it's starting to become more of an advanced degree. You know. I know now, I can tell you in our program, because we serve around 175 students a year, we have several students that want to go into the education field as well. And I know it's so broad, different, you know, areas, but for your master program, where do you typically, you know, see people going into from there?
With the 3 tracks, the first 2, the masters in administration, you have to be a teacher already, because if you want to be a principal, you really need to be a teacher first to understand what it's like to be a principal. So that program only accepts teachers, and the masters in English language learning is the same, because if you're going to teach people a second language, you need to have taught them through a first language first. But the curriculum and instruction, anyone can take that, and actually we have a lot of staff on campus who are taking that master's program, and maybe they just want to teach in a business, for example. So like one of my friends works for Leggett & Platt, and she's a trainer for them. She's a certified teacher. And so people don't think about the fact that you can have an education degree and work for a corporation. You can work for Missouri Southern in PR or different things. And so the curriculum and instruction is the broadest major, and that's our largest group of students right now. And so you can, that has a lot of electives in it too, so you can kind of design your track of what you want to focus on. And some teachers take it to be like a coach in a school, like a literacy coach, or to be a technology coach. And so it's mainly about designing curriculum and how you can better your teaching. And if you're a regular ed teacher or a teacher in this area, you get a pay bump to get a master's. You know, most districts pay anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 more a year if you get your master's, so that we see teachers come back after their first year, and then we see teachers come back after 15 to 20 years. It kind of depends on where they're at in their track. And so it's a very broad range. And it's interesting, the classes are all online, so that's another interesting piece of it, because you need to know how to use technology if you're going to be in the program, because you have to upload things and download things and be pretty versed in Blackboard and those types of technology pieces. So we have a broad range though, and the administration program is in its 2nd cohort, and so the first cohort is getting ready to graduate, so those people will be eligible to be principals in this area, and so it's a great option because Southern has not offered that before. So.
One thing that I'm curious about, I have quite a few students that come into my office who are not education majors, but who, let's say, maybe majoring in history or another, maybe English, but not going the teaching route. And then they ask me questions about, what if, can I become like alternatively certified, or what type of process can I go? I'm originally from Oklahoma, so I generally know Oklahoma's, how they do it pretty well. I mean, there, you don't have to go to graduate school, in order, to, try to, go through the teacher education. You just take, a couple of tests and you get alternatively certified. Now, it does here, basically, if you don't have a degree in education, do you basically work on your master's?
There is an option, it's called the Temporary Authorization Program, and it's through the state of Missouri, but you have to be hired by a school district already. So the school district has to say, for example, you decide you want to teach history or Japanese, and so they say, they'll hire you provisionally, and then you have to take so many courses, and we do offer all those courses in our program at the master's level. So we do have several teachers who are doing that, but it's not, you have to have a teaching job first through a district to say that you're going to do this, and so you can't do it first and then go get hired in our specific program that we offer on campus.
And is there specific requirements to actually get into education? Do you have to have a teaching degree, or do you have an X amount of hours, or?
You either have to have the teaching degree or you can do this temporary authorization certification, but you have 2 years to get it done. You have so many hours you have to take. There are specific courses you have to take. You have to have a certain GPA. You have to have a background check through the FBI. You know, so there's like a list of things, but it's not impossible. So you can do it. I don't know about Oklahoma or Kansas or Arkansas. You know, we have teachers that go into all 4 of those states, and they all have a different process for alternative certification. But you can come back to us once you've been hired in Missouri, and we will help you get through that.
I know for Oklahoma, for better or for worse, you basically take 3 tests. You take 2, and then you can start teaching, and then you have X amount of years to take the 3rd test. It's like a professional develop, or for professional teachers, certification deal. And so, so it's a lot easier, but it's just, I think it's largely because they're having such a bad shortage.
Yes.
And so they've kind of laxed it up a little bit so people, will do it.
And there is a teaching shortage in the state of Missouri. We just saw a report that states that every area, so Becca could tell you that there were shortage areas like science and math and foreign language, but now every area in the state of Missouri is a teacher shortage because the baby boomers are all retiring and we don't have enough teachers to replace. So they're probably going to have to come up with some alternative track options more than what they already have. Obviously, we think that teachers need to be prepared, and to take a test and to go out and teach is probably not the best option. You need some instruction because teaching's tough, but that's where the master's program is good because we can help you.
And is the GRE required?
No, but we do have letters of recommendation and a certain GPA and a writing sample that we want to see a sample of writing because we think that writing is a really important piece for grad school. So, and I think we're getting ready to, we haven't incorporated this yet, but some video interviews. So the student will answer some interview questions and send us video of that links. And so that's going to be coming probably next fall will be the rollout of that.
Now, do you think that probably plays a part because I remember in my graduate program, we did a lot of presentations in class. And you think that may be part of the reason behind that because you probably do a lot of or teach lessons?
Yes, and since we're only online, we don't get to see the person and their presentation skills. And so we've decided to do the videos so that we can see the person and their presentation skills and just get to know them a little bit through the videos in a different way than just on written page. So that will roll out, I believe, in the fall is when we voted for that to be part of the admissions process for our programs.
This kind of ties me in, hopefully transitions into the money part here, is that I know in graduate school, for example, I didn't get Pell, and so now in education, do you still, can you potentially still get some Pell, for that
Pell,
or not?
But there is a TEACH grant that's available from the federal government. So you would still fill out a FAFSA for graduate school, marking yourself as a graduate student. But like Eddie said, the federal grants that we know of, as far as a federal Pell Grant or even a state grant, like Access Missouri grant here in Missouri, are not available to students that already have a bachelor's degree. But there is a different federal program for educators called the TEACH grant, and that comes from the federal government. The school here at Southern, we do apply for those funds and have received approval for that. So any of our education majors, undergraduate or graduate, can qualify for TEACH grant, which it's not exactly the same as a Pell Grant because it's not need-based. It's not based on being a low-income family. Basically, anybody in an education field can get a TEACH grant. They have to have a 3.25 GPA and maintain that, and they also have to plan to work out of school, when they finish, at least 4 years out of 8 years total in a high-need field in a low-income school district, which is very common around here. And there's a national list of school districts that would qualify, and every year a state list of shortage areas. So a lot of times it's the STEM, it's the science and math, sometimes foreign languages. There's a whole variety of shortage areas. Sometimes it's a county, sometimes it's actually a designated geographical area, but a shortage area in some way, whether it's subject or geographic. And if you teach in those fields for 4 years out of a total of 8 years, then that grant stays a grant. So it is free money to you that you use to help you pay for the schooling. If for some reason you don't fulfill the 4 out of 8 year obligation in teaching in those areas, then it would become a loan that you would work to repay just like a regular student loan. So we have a lot of education folks that take advantage of the Teach Grant. They can use that at the undergraduate level as well as at the graduate level, and use that instead of a student loan because it's more likely to stay a grant for them and not have to be money they repay. The nice thing is they can use it in addition to any other grants they qualify for. So if they are an undergraduate student and have Pell, they could use Teach Grant on top of it and not have to borrow anything. If they're a graduate student, where traditionally at the master's level, the only thing from the federal side that's available to you is an unsubsidized student loan or maybe a graduate assistantship through the school or federal work-study funds by working on campus. There's not a whole lot of federal dollars available, but that Teach Grant is available for folks going into that education major field. So another little carve out that helps encourage people to go into education.
I'm kind of curious about, more the financial aspect about how much do you typically see a student get in, debt when it comes to graduate school? I mean, what would you say is probably around the average here?
Well, the cost here at the graduate level is higher per credit hour than at the undergraduate level, although it's still relatively low comparative to lots of other schools, especially four-year universities in this region. So even though the tuition's a little bit higher, you're not taking as many credit hours. Typically a full-time graduate level load is about 9 credit hours as opposed to 12 or 15 at the undergraduate level. So the bill really isn't a whole lot different because you're making up, the tuition might be higher, but you're taking less credit hours. So overall, the cost is not hugely more. But because you don't have grants and maybe limited scholarships at the master's level, students do have to borrow sometimes for the entire cost instead of supplementing it with other things. So it's not uncommon to see students borrow, $10,000 or $12,000 a year to go to graduate school because a lot of times they are going to graduate school solely and not working a full-time job. For student loans at the graduate levels, students have to be in 6 hours minimum to qualify for the loan dollars. So even if you are a full-time employed individual, you've got to take at least a half-time load of 6 hours to qualify for those dollars to help you pay. So in that case, if they're working a full-time job but they still need money to help pay tuition, they won't borrow near as much because they just need it for the bill at the school, not for living expenses. So we see graduate debt a lot lower on average because of that reason. There's a lot more working people who are supplementing their lifestyle with their income and then just borrowing to cover their cost to pay the school.
Yeah, and when it comes to those student loans, at least what I've kind of noticed, it seems to me like a lot of the graduate student loans, they tend to be a little bit higher percentage-wise, to borrow that. I don't know if that's still the case. The interest rate,
yes,
so it seems
the
to be
interest
just a
rate
little
is
bit more.
a tad bit higher for graduate, yep. It's still capped. There's a federal maximum where it can't go above 8.25%, but they usually are around 6%, where undergrad loans are around 4% right now. And then they change every year based on Congress and the Treasury bill rates. But yeah, so it is a little bit more expensive because it's all unsubsidized, which means the government's not paying the interest for you while you're in school, and the interest rate itself is just a tad bit higher.
Yeah.
But still a good investment if you have no other way to pay and you're looking at a salary increase because of that higher degree. It's worth the investment for a couple years to do that.
And so one thing I'm kind of curious, thinking back to your own, experience, maybe you're working a while, then you decide, hey, I want to go back and work on that master's degree. I mean, kind of tell me a little bit about, kind of what motivated you to do it, and kind of I mean, what did you experience? I mean,
That's a really good segue into my story. I worked, did my undergraduate degree and worked full-time for a couple of years and actually moved away from the area and then came back to the area and worked a similar type job, but realized I'm not gonna move up. I don't have a whole lot of upward mobility in higher education if I'm not gonna work on a master's. You know, I'm gonna stay. Well, I wanted to climb the ladder somewhat. So went back to school while I was working full-time. Took me about 2.5 years. I took about 6 hours a semester. I think one summer maybe, or maybe just 5 fall, spring, fall maybe. Took me 5 semesters basically to finish my MBA. And I had a business degree as an undergrad, so I didn't have a whole lot of prereqs or anything. I just walked right into the master's program, which I think was around 28 credit hours, somewhere around there. 28 to 30, I think, is what I had to take to get the MBA. And juggled a full-time job with the 6 hours a semester, which in my experience was a sacrifice to the rest of my life for that 2.5-year period of time, because I didn't see my husband very often, because I was at school or work all the time. You know, that's just how it was during those periods, because the graduate coursework required additional time. You had to work on research. We had group projects a lot less individual study. It was much more project-oriented in my experience. So a lot more time either researching and writing for things, and not a whole lot of time studying for an individual test, because I kind of felt like that was the undergraduate way of teaching, but at the graduate level it was much more practical usage. How do you take a real life example and, you know, learn from that? And you did a project simulation, or you did a group project that was a case study, and so you presented on your findings, or, you know, a lot more hands-on kind of stuff rather than just book work.
I mean, so obviously, I mean, you sacrificed during those years to get there, but I mean, obviously it was worth it.
It was worth it. Yeah, I don't regret it a bit.
Yeah.
I'm glad I stuck with it and did it, and I was fortunate I didn't have kids and I'm really glad I worked on my master's before I had kids. You know, it's like that little time, I'm gonna dive in and get my master's and get it done, and then life will open up again. And I remember thinking I have so much time.
Yeah.
Once I was done,
That's exactly how I felt, because, you know, I drove a lot because we lived in a very small town, and so it was 55 miles one way to get to the college. Yeah. Well, and that was really more to get in the town of it, so it was a little bit more once you get in there, because I lived in a very little small town called Mott, Oklahoma, and I went to Norman at OU, and so, you know, it's the stress of that, of the commute, because if it was bad weather, you know, you're worried about that because it's so far, you know. I mean, it may not be bad weather when you get there, but it could be bad when you're ready to leave. And so, you know, definitely remember those sacrifices. And sometimes I'd be driving home and I'd be going really slow because it's snowing. I'm thinking, you know, I don't know if it was worth it at this moment. But, you know, when it's all said and done, you know, and you finally get done, I would say then it's worth it. You know, you question yourself from time to time, you know, while you're doing all the hard work. But
I think you question if you're ready.
Yeah.
Am I ready to dive into graduate
Yeah.
school? Can I handle graduate school? Is it going to be so far advanced that I don't know what I'm doing? And really, once you've got through undergraduate, you understand how the college process works. It's just that ramped up a bit.
Yeah.
It's not different in the sense that it's still college. You still register for classes. You still have professors that you can talk to. You still have peers in your class that you're working with and stuff. That's not different. It's just a much higher level expectation. And if you're not committed and motivated to do it, don't bother.
Yeah.
Because it is all on you to make it work.
And I would imagine there's, you know, quite a bit more reading compared to undergrad,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and obviously papers may be just a little longer,
Yep.
you know, so, yeah. And so, you know, thinking that, you know, your college experience, I mean, did you go, like, you go all the way through and get your degrees, or did you take break, work for a while, and kind of go back and forth?
I went through and got my master's, and then I worked for 6 years, then I went back to get my PhD. And so I was, you know, poor during both graduate. The problem is, you know, after I got my master's and I worked, I had money, and so I developed a lifestyle expectation. I became a poor, you know, graduate student again. And I remember, you know, thinking, well, I'm not going to do financial aid. This isn't going to happen. I'm going to get out debt free. It's on my accountant, so I budgeted everything. So I sat down, it's my rent, it's my car, it's all this stuff. Laid it all out. I knew what I was going to earn. I was a teaching assistant. and I got down to the bottom for entertainment. And I realized I had $10 a month for entertainment. And I looked at that and I headed right to the financial aid. And that's what I mean, is there's just no way. I mean, you have to budget, I think, for yourself. I mean, you know, there's got to be some stuff going on for you that is good, because you won't need it there. But I think when I went through, accounting's different because it's not a math degree, but there does tend to be, I'll say, word problems, and there's a right answer. You know, 2 + 2 has to be 4. And so you can imagine if you were doing math, and all of a sudden you go into grad school and they say, well, sit down and write about math. And it's like, what are you, I don't, what? You know, and so this whole thing, we've been learning rules, and someone will say, plan for this. You know, you're talking with a client. What questions would you need to ask them to come up with the best tax planning advice that you have? And we've never have done that. We've been looking at what tax rules were, where in the form to put a number. You want me to think and heavens right? Well, that's not what accountants do. We hardly even talk to other people. So it really, and a lot of it will depend on what, you know, your background is. Because I'm thinking of Ashley, if you're history, you're writing all the time. You know, you would probably walk right into a graduate saying, I'm good with this, you know. And they, you know, maybe it would be more of a surprise for you on the writing. You've certainly done it with your other club, but it would be a little different. And I know the big thing for me, because the programs are smaller, you know, like we have 200 undergraduate accounting majors and we have 20 roughly max students. So you really know the students. Almost, I won't call it an employer-employee relationship, but it's kind of like, Nate, you missed on Monday. What's going on? I noticed your paper wasn't real good. Where was your head? You know, it's like, what? Well, it's just,
Very
you know,
personal.
yeah, it's much more personal than the undergrad. It was just a change in that.
I know in our program at OU, I mean, we probably had around 15, 20 students, if that, for certain classes. And now I didn't get my undergrad there, but you know, I had heard about some of those English courses or science classes, and they had 300 or 400 students. And so, you know, going to a big university, you know, undergrad is a lot different from the graduate school. It's a lot, like, a lot more personal. You know who your professors are. They know who you are. You know, if you miss, they notice. And so.
And your group notices.
Yes,
If you're on
yes.
a project team, they know
Yes.
that you're on too.
And you learn that the weakest link pretty quick, you know, and so that's, yeah, you work a lot more as a team than that, so.
The other thing that probably wasn't as negative on a positive side is as I had worked full time while working on my MBA, I could use a lot of real world life work experiences in my projects. So there was a lot of parallel to, we did project improvement one semester and process management improvement. And so we took some operational processes from my work life and applied that as our group project to map out what our process improvement was going to be. So taking your real life and the things you're actually doing in a job environment and applying it in your master's program, to me, felt easier because I didn't have to start over and do something different. I was just taking my daily life and applying it at the graduate setting. So that was kind of nice too, and then it becomes practical knowledge that you figure out, oh, well, I can actually do this now in my job. I learned something in grad school that now can actually impact our work life and make it better. So it was very reciprocal, which I thought was kind of cool once that clicked and you realize, oh, I don't have to start from scratch and come up with a brand new, you know, pretend scenario. I've got a real life work scenario that would happen to be applicable at the master's level. And actually, I think that's what the professors wanted, was more real life type stuff. So you're using critical thinking. It's much less rote memorization. It's you're thinking outside the box and having to think about how you would ask questions and what you would project in certain ways and dream up creative solutions for stuff. But it's kind of fun because you can take what you're already doing and apply it and try it and see if it works.
And I would imagine that, you know, especially the teaching program, I was imagining like that, because didn't you say, you know, that you really want to teach for a while if you're going to go and try to be a principal? So you actually want to have some teaching experience. I'm assuming that, you know, they bring that experience to those classes.
That's what I was thinking about that, because we just started this third program and I'm in charge of the third program. And So I feel a responsibility to the teachers to make it relevant to their daily life. And several of the students in the cohort are my former students, so I know them, and they also teach in the district where my children go to school. So I see them on a personal level, and so I ask them every semester to tell me if there's an assignment that we did that they did not feel was relevant or helpful, because I don't want them to do assignments for busy work's sake. I think that's a big difference. Not that we ever want students to do things for busy work, but it seems like at the undergrad level, we give tests a lot because that's really the only way we can assess. But at this level, it's more application, like Becca said, of what you know. And so for me, it's not just application, but meaningful and relevant application, which is really important. And so because we are a small university and because our programs are small, I think we get a lot of input from our students, probably you as well in your classes. And so that's nice because they feel like they have some say in what we do. And I read those course evals and look at that information and decide, maybe I should do it this way next time. And so I think that's an important piece. And then the other piece is, I went back, I had a grant actually to get part of my master's degree in teaching English language learners. And mine was out of necessity because the district I was working in, we had a lot of students move in who didn't speak English and I didn't know what to do with them. And so this grant opened up at a different university and I went. But what was so awesome is what Becca was saying is I was learning and I could immediately go back into the classroom and apply what I was learning. And I think that's the difference between graduate and undergrad. If you are employed somewhere, a lot of times you can immediately apply that knowledge. And so it was very exciting for me because I was like, oh, we just learned about this. And now I get to, try it in the class and see if it works or if it seems like a lot of times you're learning theory. And then you wonder if the theory is really applicable. And then you start applying it and you're like, oh, it really does work or it doesn't work. So I think that's what we try to do in our program. Most of our professors have spent considerable time in the K-12 setting, so they know what it's like in the real world.